Hey everybody, happy Valentine's Day and welcome to Adapter Parish episode 111, Lady Chatterley's Lover. Consider this episode our Valentine to you, our super awkward Valentine. But before we get to all that, let's talk about our next episode. I'm not going to lie, Lady Chatterley's Lover left us feeling spent. So we're going to take things down a notch for our next episode and look at 2 movies. It's like a vacation for us. We haven't gotten to talk about Dudley Moore since we covered Arthur, and we felt like it had been too long. In our next episode, we're going to be discussing the 1967 movie Bedazzled, directed by Stanley Donen and starring Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, and its 2000 remake, directed by Harold Ramis and starring Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley. It'll be a devilish good time. That's my joke, to let the people who don't know anything about Bedazzled know that one of the main characters is literally Satan. That'll be out in 2 weeks on Tuesday, March 1st. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode or any others that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/adaptcast. We've got a patron-only community and our bi-weekly bonus show, Adapter Parish Plus, with episodes releasing every Tuesday between episodes of this show. We hope you check it out. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adapterparishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapter Parish, episode 111, Lady Chatterley's Lover. Hello and welcome to Adapter Parish. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day.
I'm Jeremy Latour.
I'm Ari Lipshaw, and we're in love.
We are so in love.
It's great.
We don't do any of the stuff that's in this story because gross.
Yeah, ew. We
Ew.
would never.
Ew.
We would never.
Ew.
Ew. We made a rash decision.
To do this?
Yes.
At all?
Yes. We plan out our season usually like a couple months in advance, and usually we kind of look at like what the date is that it's going to come out, and we think, is there a holiday? Is there something, timely that we should do? And this was going to be coming out like the day after Valentine's Day. So we were like, oh, what's our Valentine's Day episode going to be this year? Because we've done like Valentine's Day themed episodes in the past, and I was like, oh, it'd be funny. We've been talking about it. Let's do Lady Chatterley's Lover. And you were like, okay. And then
you tried to walk it back, and I was like, no, I've already written it down.
Yeah.
It's happening.
And then we were like a movie and a half into this, and you were like, why did you want to do something that would make you so extremely uncomfortable for so many hours?
Like if I was married to a turtle,
Yeah.
it would have spent the 2 weeks we spent watching all of these inside of its shell.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can describe what it was like to sit next to you on the couch.
Yeah. Because I don't like kissing
In movies.
In movies.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy nudity.
Here's the thing I've never heard you say.
It makes me very uncomfortable.
Do you know what I appreciated most about it? This
Yeah.
is you. This is the thing I've never heard you say.
Yeah.
Do you know what I appreciated most about it?
Mhm.
When he hung dong.
Yeah.
Like that's
I don't
not,
like
not
it.
a thing you've ever said.
It just makes me, I don't know, I guess I am repressed. I don't really care for the movie simulation of sexy times. I just don't like to watch it. It makes me very uncomfortable. I guess let's go into this. This is a story about people having lots of sexy times. So if you are listening to this with someone who is not old enough to be listening to stuff about sexy times, or you are that person, don't listen. You should not listen.
No.
This episode is firmly rated NC-17.
Yeah.
Is this just going to be the whole episode with me just going, ugh, ugh, ah, ugh,
I mean, that's what the last 2 weeks of my life have been.
Yeah. All right. Is that enough banter? Should we dive in?
Shall we say anything more about it?
I would just say the 1993 version, despite the fact that I have been made uncomfortable by a lot of these versions, I actually, you were like, I don't know how we can get it. Like, how can we get it? And I was like, oh, I don't know if you know this. I own it on DVD. And I was so proud of myself. This is the very first thing we've ever watched for the show, that the way that we acquired it was I had already purchased it on DVD many years ago and just happened to own it.
Yeah, and you had it in your little elder millennial DVD binder.
Yeah, with
You know,
my
the
name on it.
The one that went to college with you.
Yeah, it's got my name written on it in nail polish.
Right.
I feel like I'm stalling.
You are stalling.
I am stalling.
This is fun for me.
It's the drag it out gesture.
Lady Chatterley's Lover was written by D.H. Lawrence. It was privately published in 1928 in Italy, privately published in 1929 in France, and you could get it in the UK and the US after like 1930, but only in a censored version.
Like expurgated.
Yeah. And you couldn't get it unexpurgated in the UK until 1960.
I assume the version that we read was unexpurgated.
I would be shocked if it wasn't.
Because, yeah, it had full stuff in it. So I think.
I don't know. I feel like something that's going to come up, especially when we get to the last version, is the idea that, like, well, you've gone so far, but apparently that's a step you're not willing to take.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised if the version we read was the version they were like, we will go this far,
we can't
but
have
no
that.
further.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which part of the book for you was the part that you knew we would not see? Was there like any part of the books where you were like, this is too much even for like a movie? Like no movie will show this.
There is a significant plot line of giving names to each other's genitals that was definitely in some of the versions that we watched, but it was only kind of mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of philosophical talk about the nature of sex that was in the book that I did not expect to see in any version. Was there a specific thing that you were thinking of?
I mean, I think I went in a slightly different direction with that.
Okay.
There's just like, do you remember the part of the book? I feel like I should just lean into the fact that this is uncomfortable. Do you remember the part in the book when she's like kneeling down on the floor and she's like looking at something and her whole butt and undercarriage is up in the air?
Yeah.
And it's described in detail, him like taking his hand and just like
yes,
firmly saying good day to her entire undercarriage and then talking talking about it, giving like his whole TED talk about her undercarriage, like as it's exposed to God and everyone.
Is that the part where he says she has the best ladies behind of anyone? Because that was in one version that we saw.
Yeah, I think it might have been like around there. It's just the intense description of it. I was like, okay, here's the deal. I know we are going to see butts.
Butts.
You will see butts. You will see boobs. You will see dong. Like you're gonna see you're gonna see bush. Like you are gonna see all of those things.
Bush.
I didn't think that there would be anything that would actually like take a microscope.
Where he's like wrist deep into her body.
Exactly.
And like discussing.
And I just remember reading it going like, here's the deal. I know I will not see this.
Yeah.
There's no version that will do this.
And I don't believe we did see that.
No, but I didn't even think about...
I'm glad that we're leading with this incredibly explicit thing. We haven't even gotten to the
I would just prefer that people know what they're...
mechanics of the plot yet.
I just want people to know what they're in for.
Did you know what you were in for when I said we should read this book?
I thought it wouldn't be as explicit as it was.
Yeah.
Like, I knew it was explicit, but I thought it was explicit for people in the 20s.
Yeah.
Well, people in their 20s were apparently more modern than I expected. Apparently, I'm an asshole.
They
and
weren't
they were
repressed.
Mature adults.
It was like post-war, like we almost died. Let's live for today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, no, wait, you're thinking we don't know about penises and vaginas and how they relate to each other.
Yes.
No, we do, and we actually want that in our literature. We don't want anyone to sell it in stores, but we all want to read it.
Yes.
Like, I didn't expect that.
And
so
2 penises, that's too much. It has to be a penis and a vagina.
clearly a penis and a vagina.
Yes.
Yeah, you can talk about butts. That's okay.
Butts is fine.
Honestly, I didn't expect to see the word fuck in it.
Yeah.
How naive is that? To think, I didn't know that the word fuck existed at that time.
Sweetie. You sweet summer child.
Like, I knew it existed, but I
I'm
didn't think
pretty
it was...
sure it's like in Shakespeare.
Was it a word that Shakespeare invented?
It was a word that he knew for sure because there is wordplay around things that sound like fuck in Shakespeare.
I want to be clear, too, just in case anyone couldn't tell, I was like halfway kidding about that.
Yeah.
I know that the word fuck has been around for centuries. What I really mean, though, is like, I have not read too many things myself that use the word so freely that were published before like 1960.
Sure.
That's just in my personal experience.
This is fine.
But I am also freely admitting that I'm coming to this from a place of naivete.
Yeah. All right. I think we need to take 2 big steps back and talk about the plot of this dang book.
Oh, it has a plot?
Well, I just feel like...
I thought it just had genitals.
I feel like we're like 10 minutes in, and if someone is unfamiliar with Lady Chatterley's Lover, which is like not out of the realm of possibility, they're like, what are they talking about?
I just always assumed.
Why have you said penis 6 times already?
I just assumed that if anyone doesn't know it, they were as familiar as I was with it, because
Yeah.
I always knew about Lady Chatterley's lover, and it was always just one of these things that like I always assumed had like no sex in it, just like a lot of glances and a lot of it. I didn't realize that it was. I didn't realize it was smut. Frankly, this is where everyone finds out that I am a Quaker.
All right. Should I do? I have volunteered to do back of the book.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's
I
talk
was
about what
actually
this is.
voluntold to do back of the book. So
Mhm.
here we go. This is from Goodreads. All right, this is a short description. Let's see here. Lawrence's frank portrayal of an extramarital affair and the explicit sexual explorations of its central characters caused this controversial book, now considered a masterpiece, to be banned as pornography until 1960. All right, that's a fact. Doesn't really tell us about the book though. Let me try. Hang on. Let
Is
me
it
try
viewed
something
as a
else.
masterpiece now?
Let me just try something else real quick here. Hang on one second. Let's try this one here. Try to get a you know,
Okay.
just like a plot summary.
Sure.
Like you would have on the back of the book.
Uh-huh.
There we go. Lady Chatterley's Lover is both one of the most beautiful and notorious love stories in modern fiction. The summation of D.H. Lawrence's artistic achievement, it sharply illustrates his belief that tenderness and passion were the only weapons that could save man from self-destruction.
I see what you're doing.
All right,
This is solid, sweetie. This is a solid joke.
Interesting, because I still don't quite know what the book is about.
Mhm.
Let me try something else.
By all
here.
means, try another one.
Yeah,
I sure would like to know what this book is about.
with its 4-letter words and its explicit descriptions of sexual intercourse, Lady Chatterley's Lover is the novel with which D.H. Lawrence is most often associated. I just feel that I still don't know what the book is about.
Yeah.
All right, wait. Hang on. And then here we go. The story of how this is actually
This is
the
the
plot.
last time I'm going to ask you to do back of the book.
The story of how the wife of Sir Clifford Chatterley responds when her husband returns from the war, paralyzed from the waist down,
Mhm.
and of the tender love which then develops between her and her husband's gamekeeper. Okay, we're getting plot, right?
Yeah.
Is a complex one open to a variety of conflicting interpretations. I don't know what this book is about. I give up. I do not feel that the internet has shed any light on what this goddamn book is about.
Well, technically, we're the internet right now. So do you
Interesting.
want to try to explain what the plot is of Lady Chatterley's Lover?
I'd like to give it the old college try.
Just get in there.
It's after the war. Which war? The Great War. It's the 1920s or so. We have our main character, Constance Chatterley. She is married to Sir Clifford Chatterley. She is Lady Chatterley. He went to war along with his older brother, who was the heir to their great estate of Ragby, which is in Derbyshire in England.
I forgot that it was called Ragby Hall, but thankfully one of the versions we watched, Ragby Hall, is in big letters on the
Literally
side of the building.
over the door in a way that
Just helping me remember.
things aren't. And look at like a college dorm. And his older brother is killed in the war, so he would have been the heir to the estate. But because he was killed, the estate has now fallen to the younger son, Clifford Chatterley. But unfortunately, he did suffer a grievous wound in the war. Again, this is World War I we're talking about. And he is paralyzed from the waist down. Which
Hang on, I'm checking my notes right now. I'm looking and I see that his legs don't work.
his legs don't work.
His legs don't work.
Yeah.
His lower legs don't work.
Lower legs.
His upper legs don't work.
Upper legs
I'm seeing here that his penis no longer works.
I mean, so
Also, his ability to empathize with other human beings.
that
I'm
has
seeing
also
that
become
it is not
paralyzed.
clear. It is not clear whether that was actually working before the
Yeah.
war.
I think this is a good time to just pause because there is going to be a lot of conversation as we proceed about the nature of disability. And I just want to be very clear in our discussion that
Mhm.
we are making a distinction between Clifford is a jerk for many reasons, both related and not related to how he feels about his disability. But I would want to make sure that doesn't get extended to like disabled people are jerks because they're disabled and all disabled people feel a certain way, or disabled people's bodies all work in a certain way. We are talking about a specific literary character that is unfortunately being used to sort of draw a metaphor about sort of the nature of virility. As we talk about like Clifford's penis doesn't work, that is something the author is telling us about this particular individual. Certainly, again, not meant to be a commentary in the broader spectrum about actual disabled people who aren't fictional characters and sexuality around sexuality and disability. So I'll just leave that there. It's important in the context of the story.
I mean, you're making me want to talk about something. Should I hold the commentary for after you've gone through the...
Is it relevant to what I'm talking about right now?
It is specifically related to what you just said, but
Go
it's
ahead.
a bigger topic.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to throw out my big, just get it out of the way. It was funny to me reading this book because I always had the assumption that it would be kind of a sex positive book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because it's full of sex.
Yeah.
It is one of the least sex positive books about sex I have ever read.
Yeah.
Because it's only about one type of sex.
Yeah.
Like very specifically between a man and a woman, very specifically with a power dynamic.
Yes.
Where the man is the more powerful and the woman is not.
Yeah.
So everyone else who is repressed, they're repressed because they're not doing sex this way.
Yes.
And I did not appreciate that. I just expected sex positivity, and it was weirdly narrow in its view of sex.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to be that the author is taking the position of Clifford is a jerk because even though his penis is not functioning in the way that a penis traditionally would function, there are other things he could do for Constance that he is refusing to do. It really does seem that the author himself is taking the stance of because Clifford can't get an erection, that's the end of everything, right? Despite, I think, everyone within the sound of my voice knowing that that is not true, and you do not need an erect penis to have sex between any combination of human beings, if such is your desire. I hope my parents are not listening to this.
I hope they are. I hope everybody's listening to it. I hope the world is listening to it.
You don't need a penis to have sex. I don't forget what I was talking about. I'm so uncomfortable. So anyway, Clifford's been wounded in the war. It's now several years later. They've sort of fallen into this routine.
His penis is broken, and so is their marriage.
His penis is broken. His legs are broken. Their marriage is not doing good, and she has to take care of him and do all his stuff, and she's just kind of worn out and exhausted.
Yeah, he needs her to take care of him, and she needs other guys to take care of her.
Right. So she's had like a couple of affairs, like one or two. She slept with some student in Germany, like before the war, before she was married, and now that Clifford is paralyzed, she's sort of been casually having this affair with this like Irish writer, but it's like it's not serious and it's all very physical, and we're given to understand that because she likes to have orgasms, there's something wrong with her. That D.H. Lawrence does make that very clear. She can't be having orgasms. That's very wrong.
That's always been my view.
That was not in any movie. Talk about a scene that's not in any movie. The like graphic description of how. Please forgive me. The graphic description in this book from 1928 of how she likes to get off by sort of humping the man after he has already come inside of her. I'm so uncomfortable talking about this. There's a graphic description about how she likes to bring herself to orgasm in the midst of sex.
And it's weird because in the contrasting that with all the movies we watched, I do give points to Lawrence for being willing to show a woman take control of her own pleasure.
Yeah, exactly.
Because every version we watch, I know I'm kind of spoiling this a little bit, but every version we watched really wants to present her as very virginal.
Yes.
And she only had sex with Clifford, and now she's having sex with nobody. And thank God for Mellors. Thank God for Oliver Mellors, the gamekeeper, because he opens her up to a world of sex. It's like the only version that we actually went through where she was already having sex with someone before Mellors is the book.
Yes.
And apparently no filmmaker was comfortable with that idea.
Yeah. But like it is really interesting. Again, I just want to like dig into this, no pun intended, a tiny bit.
You really want to penetrate this
I just
issue.
really want to penetrate this. The problem it seems to be, and I'm saying from the author's perspective, and this is like a statement that he's making, is the fact that she's unsatisfied and that men think she is unsatisfying is that her pleasure has to happen after the sex, quote unquote, is over, right? Like, because as everyone knows, sex is over after the penis involved ejaculates. That's the end of sex. There's no, you can't do anything after that, obviously. So the fact that she's deriving pleasure post that is like no good. What she needs is a man that can get her off before the penis is done with its job.
At the same time, that's something that's talked about specifically, is that it's the perfect version is them coming at the same time.
Right. That's very important. We are not progressing on the plot of this book. So anyway,
I feel we've gotten very deep into this.
Okay. So anyway, she's kind of drifting around. She's unsatisfied. There is a new gamekeeper on the estate. He's from the town. He also was in the war, and now he's back and kind of looking for a job. He doesn't want to go down the mines again, like his dad and everyone. And she's kind of interested in him. He seems very manly and like kind of, he doesn't have much to say for himself. As this is going on, she's just becoming kind of more and more worn down. And her sister Hilda comes to see her and says, like, wow, you really don't look well. Like, you need to get a nurse to take care of Clifford so you can have a little more free time. So the other major character who's introduced around this point is Mrs. Bolton, who is the local nurse from the village, and she comes in to kind of, instead of, nursing for the town, now she's just going to sort of be a private nurse for Clifford. She's in this sort of fascinating place, which you find in a lot of literature, is like this outsider who's entered the home who is neither part of the family nor is she a servant.
Yeah, they're servant class, so they're not a person.
But
and you're paying them, so they're not a person.
But yeah, you can carry on a conversation with them.
Yeah, like, here's the thing. We know they're not a person, but they act like people.
They seem like people.
Yeah.
So anyway, Mrs. Bolton shows up. She's a widow. Her husband was killed in the mines many, many, many years ago, and she is very capable and very smart, and Clifford really takes to her, and they become really close, and it gives Connie a lot more free time to kind of take walks around the estate. Mm-hmm. So on one of these walks, she goes out into the woods. She meets the gamekeeper who's doing stuff with pheasants.
Well, his daughter's there.
His daughter's there.
His daughter's crying.
He's got a daughter. He made his daughter cry.
He's not an ex-wife. He's an estranged
wife. But his daughter really lives with the grandmother, and he lives in the gamekeeper's cottage. It's one of those things. Like at first they really don't like each other, and then they seem to find themselves very attracted to each other.
She's attracted to him like almost immediately, because the first time she ever sees him is during this whole encounter with the daughter, and she really doesn't like him.
Yeah.
But then the next time she sees him is when she goes to the cottage, and she goes around the back, and he's stripped to the waist.
Oh.
And described as being very pale and skinny.
Very pale and skinny.
And she just, like, it is very clear in the text that she is into that.
Yeah. She's attracted to him immediately. He's kind of attracted to her immediately. Like, we're not quite sure what he's getting out of it, but, like, they're having a bunch of sex. Sort of in the meantime, Connie and Clifford have been having this ongoing conversation where he is very sad that there's not going to be an heir for Ragby Hall. And she's upset because she would have liked to have a baby. Like, she wants to have a baby. A lot of people want to have a baby. And he kind of says to her, listen, like, I don't need to know anything about it, but, like, if there is a man that you feel like would be a suitable genetic donor.
But he has to be a person.
But he has to be a person. Yeah, obviously a person, not a servant.
Not a servant.
That's not a person.
Yeah.
Obviously of our class and above.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, if you run across a man that you think might be a sort of a suitable genetic donor for the child, like, I don't really care about, like, genetics. I can take any kid that you would present me with, and I will make, obviously him, obviously it will be a son because we have a choice in the matter. I will make him, the heir to Ragby, and it'll be great. So I would actually not only approve of you going out and having a baby with another man, as long as it's discreet, I would love for you to do that. And she's kind of got a varying array of reactions to this, but she does in fact end up pregnant with Mellor's child.
Because they bone a whole bunch.
Yep. Like at all times of the month. It's not just one time. And so there's sort of this plot where she's supposed to go on vacation to Venice with her sister and her dad, and she's like, yeah, now I really have to go because, like, that's sort of going to be my cover story, that I, like, met a man in Venice and that's why I'm pregnant. The timing of this never makes a lot of sense to me because she's already, like, 4 months pregnant at this point, so that would be, like, a very premature baby.
It's
but, like,
not. This book doesn't get bogged down in those kind of details.
It doesn't get bogged down in those kind of details of, like, how pregnant you are when what happens. So she does go to Venice, and while she's away in Venice, there's this terrible scandal back at home, and that is that Mellor's wife, his old wife, has shown up. She's causing all kinds of scandal in the town. She's, like, telling all kinds of, like, nasty stories about him and spreading all these rumors that he's had women over to the cottage, and she's spreading rumors that one of the women was Lady Chatterley.
I, for one, don't believe a word of it.
There you go. And so when Connie gets back, she finds that he's sort of been, like, driven out of town and he's not there anymore. Mrs. Bolton, by the way, figured out that this whole thing was going on. And I think the thing about Mrs. Bolton is she's kind of set up to be an antagonist. And I think at the beginning you're, like, worried, like, oh, she's going to carry Connie's secret to Clifford. But she's super supportive. She's the one that sort of plants, if you forgive me, plants the seed in the ear.
Sweetie, you're way too uptight. You're way too uptight.
In the ear of the village, like, oh, you never know about Sir Chatterley. He's capable of more than you think. Like, she might have a baby one of these days. It's certainly possible. And of course, it's because she knows that Connie's carrying on this affair with someone. The book ends not with a bang, but a whimper.
Would you say the book finished before
Before
you did?
the book the book rather prematurely ejaculated.
Mhm.
He's in the process of getting divorced. She's in the process of leaving Clifford and getting divorced. They can't really go to each other or see each other because there's a whole thing about, like, if a third party is named in the divorce, like, it's much harder to get a divorce, or what. There's an aspect of, like, how you get a divorce in the 20s that's not super important.
Can I wrap this up really
Sure.
quickly? The book gets to the end. He writes her a letter implying that he wants to be with her. And then the book finishes and rolls over and goes to sleep.
Okay.
And I will tell you this, as a reader, I was not done, but the book was.
The book was done.
And I was just laying there in bed with the book rolled over next to me, unwilling to continue.
Unsatisfied.
And I was not satisfied.
We sort of have already talked about what did you think about this book. I'm not sure it was what you expected. I think it was what I expected.
It was like, okay, here are 3 different things about the book that struck me.
Yeah.
One, I already kind of talked about. I expected it to be sex positive. For the amount of sex that's in it, it was surprisingly not sex positive. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. 2, I will say, since I read it, I have kind of evolved on this a little. Like, I'm glad we didn't record this right after I read the book,
Mm-hmm.
because throughout the whole book, I had heard that people said, like, oh, this book deals with class. And the entire time I'm reading, I'm going, like, this book deals with vaginas and penises.
Yeah.
I don't think this book deals with class. That sounds like bullshit to me. And then, you know what? Just taking a step back from it a little bit. Yeah, no, I do think the
It deals with class.
class is in there and it is intentional, and I'm willing to accept that. Here's the thing, though. No one in this book shuts the fuck up,
Yeah.
ever. Everyone in this book has something to say all the time about God and religion and philosophy and sex, and everyone's giving a TED Talk in this book all the time.
Yeah.
All the time about everything. And then we meet Mellors, who I'm thinking is finally going to be the type of person who's going to stand in contrast to all these other assholes. And then what does he do the first time he gets Connie alone in his hut? He just gets up on stage and says, I'd like to talk about how I think men and women should be together. Welcome to my
Butt
TED
naked,
Talk.
by the way, at the time.
Butt naked with his dick out and like a flower in it. Yeah, in it, like fully, like she puts the flower in, like
just
it's,
like the flower child in the barrel of the gun.
yes. I don't understand how it was pleasant for him. So that
Listen, don't yuck other people's yum.
No, you know what? That's really fair. It is it is actually super hypocritical for me to say everything I just said and then say that that's not okay. No, you're absolutely right. I'm an asshole. That's totally fine. Oh man, I'm such a prude. I didn't even know it. I thought I wasn't. Anyway, so on the one hand, I was super frustrated that the one character I thought was not going to be just a philosophical asshole turned out to be just another philosophical asshole.
Yeah.
But I just think it's really funny that D.H. Lawrence is spending all this time writing this book about douchebag dudes who feel like they know everything about what women actually want and need.
Yeah.
And he's sitting here writing this book about what he thinks women actually want and need, but he's creating all of these straw men in it who don't know what women want.
Yeah.
But he does.
He does. Oh, he knows.
And like, I don't know, I couldn't take this book seriously by the end. Not that there wasn't interesting stuff in it, and not that the sex wasn't sexy. Occasionally it was. A lot of times it wasn't, for me personally. But I just, at the end, I couldn't really take D.H. Lawrence seriously because he just sounded like the people he was talking about in his book. And that's how I felt really strongly until I read that apparently Forster was a really big fan. And I like Forster a whole bunch. And apparently after Lawrence's death, Forster was talking about how people did not understand how intelligent he was and how good his literature was. And you know what? Here's the deal. There's people who are smarter than me. E.M. Forster's probably one of them. So you know what? I'm going to take a step back for a second and say, I am not sure that D.H. Lawrence doesn't know what he's doing. Didn't feel to me like he did, but I'm not going to say that he didn't. Also, quick thing about E.M. Forster, apparently, even though Morris wasn't published until 1971 after Forster died, allegedly, Lawrence was privy to a draft of it and based Lady Chatterley in part on his reading of E.M. Forster's Morris.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm not willing to say that D.H. Lawrence didn't know what he was doing. I feel like I'm willing to say that in this book, D.H. Lawrence espouses beliefs that I think are pretty much nonsense.
I mean, you basically just said everything that I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Just did more succinctly.
Yeah.
You just finished before I did.
Okay.
I needed more time to get there.
All right. Okay. All right. Should we move on
Yeah.
to the movies? And I'm sure the book will come up again.
I'm sure it'll come up.
It'll come up as needed. All right. What was the first one that we watched?
So we decided to stick, as we always do. I mean, I feel like it is most appropriate with something this focused on physical love that we just watched.
Sexual love.
English and French versions. There were other ones. There was like a Filipino softcore version that was like cited on Wikipedia.
Oh.
I was like, I'm not going to find this. I'm okay.
Also, by the way, here is one thing we did not watch that had we decided to watch it would have been the first thing ever for this show that was acquired on xvideos.com, which was a movie called Young Lady Chatterley that we literally for a moment were like, oh, is this a genuine adaptation? Do we need to watch this? Is a full softcore porn from the 70s.
I think it was hardcore. Was it hardcore or was it softcore?
It's softcore. It was softcore, but
okay.
it was softcore porn. It wasn't like these. I mean, it was like...
No, it wasn't. It wasn't art like these.
It wasn't... It was... What I'm saying is, it was made as a porn.
Yeah.
It wasn't made as a art house film.
I will. You're actually bringing up a thing that I don't want to spend more than a minute on.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna say
the difference
of you,
between art and pornography is a blurry line.
No, that's actually not what I was gonna say.
Okay.
Even though, you know what? Now that you say it, here's the thing. I'm just gonna throw this out there. I think there is room in the world of filmed media for someone to say, I'm going to adapt Lady Chatterley. I'm going to actually take it seriously as an adaptation, but I am going to actually show all the sex.
Uh-huh.
I say that as someone... Did you ever see Short Bus?
Do you mean when you say actually show all the sex, you mean like actually show people actually
having sex? As depicted in the book.
Yes, I never saw Short Bus.
So Short Bus is a good movie, and it's interesting, and it's well made by people who are interested in telling stories about characters. It also happens to have actual unsimulated sex in it. The idea of a version of Lady Chatterley existing in the world that actually shows what is talked about in the book, I'm for it. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying I'm for it more than I'm for it more than I'm against it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I have to say on the matter.
All right.
I certainly don't want to be the one to do it, and I don't know who should be the one to do it, but I'm like open to it existing in the world.
I feel like the intersection of filmmakers who are able and interested to make the period piece based on the D.H. Lawrence novel Lady Chatterley's Lover, and filmmakers who are able and interested in making movies where people actually have sex on camera, I feel like the Venn diagram
is not just saying, John Cameron Mitchell.
Yeah, what I'm saying is I'm not saying there's no overlap. I'm not saying they're two totally unrelated circles. I'm saying it's very thin.
Yeah.
Whoever that may be.
I think it's John Cameron Mitchell.
That's fine. I love John Cameron Mitchell.
I know.
All right. Can we talk about these goddamn movies, please?
Okay, so I actually think this might be one of those ones that we genuinely don't need to spend that much time on, and I think it's a good one to start with because I was really excited about it. Just like I heard that the book was banned, and then I read it and was like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of sex in it. So 1955, there's a movie called L'Amant de Lady Chatterley. It was Lady Chatterley's Lover, and this was a French version directed by Marc Allegret. It was written by Allegret, Gaston Bonheur, and Philippe de Rothschild. Bonheur and Rothschild had actually written this as a play and then was adapted into this movie. And it starred Danielle Darrieux as Constance Chatterley, Erno Crisa as Oliver Mellers, and Leo Genn as Sir Clifford Chatterley. Mm-hmm. It's French. It's from 1955.
It's black and white.
I was really excited about it because it was banned in the United States until 1959. And we were like, oh, let's start off with a banned version.
Mm-hmm.
It's banned because it espouses adultery.
Yeah.
Like, it's not banned
It's not banned for, like, nudity.
I understand that what I'm about to say might sound like I'm trying to end the conversation about this movie, and I promise that's not true, but here it is anyway. This movie was nothing.
Yeah.
It was nothing.
I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say that. They made some interesting choices.
Yeah.
One of which was they set it contemporarily. They did not set it in the 20s. They set it in post-war 1950s. Mm-hmm. So it was definitely, when they were talking about the war, they talked about la guerre, like, a lot. But I am pretty sure they were talking about World War II and that this was set in the 1950s.
In France.
In France.
Yeah. I got that too.
Yeah. But I almost think it's because they couldn't afford to, like, do it as a period piece. Like, definitely the costumes were just, like, 1950s costumes. I mean, the other thing I noticed as we were watching was that, like, I think it was actually, if you cast your mind back to what things were like in 1955, like, I actually think it was pretty shocking for 1955. Like, they
Oh no, I
definitely
just it
like,
just I was hoping for something more than just adultery
yeah,
being the reason. I understand.
but there's definitely like two people. Like, obviously they're not nude or like
No.
having sex on screen, but it definitely goes pretty far to imply that that's what's happening. And I at one point I turned to you and I was like, imagine what like a Hays Code version of Lady Chatterley's Lover would be like. Think of all the things you're not allowed to show on screen: adultery,
Mm-hmm.
divorce, pregnancy. Like, what would the plot in fact be? It would be a very short movie.
What it would be is that Connie would be really into Mellors, but nothing would ever happen between the two of them, and then Clifford would die
Yeah.
by his own, and it would be his own fault
Yeah.
because it wouldn't be murder. No one
Yeah.
would kill him.
Right. But
But
you
then-
can't show suicide in those movies either, I think.
No. I'm not. No, I'm saying literally it would be his fault.
Oh,
Like
I
he would
see.
say, "I'm gonna go."
You would have an accident.
I'm gonna go take my little motorized chair
Yeah.
out onto a cliff, and then I'm gonna fall off of it. Oh no! Like I'm saying, literally, like his fault.
Yeah. Okay.
Like in Rebecca, how
Sure.
they couldn't show that he actually killed her.
No,
She
I get
just
it.
she fell
She fell
down
down,
and
yeah.
died. So what I'm saying is it would be his fault, and then she would be free to go after Oliver. But then she wouldn't. The movie would end with her like knocking on his door to say I'm here, and then the credits would roll.
So funny, by the way, in Rebecca, having read the book and hearing like, what? You mean you killed her? Oh, no. I didn't kill her.
I was present at her death.
I feel like we're going off on a tangent because we watched this movie like 2 weeks ago and it was not very memorable, so we don't have a lot to say.
Here's the only thing I remember from it.
Yeah.
When he's leaving his post because he loses his job. The first thing, what do you remember? What he does?
What does he do?
He shoots his dog.
Oh God, yeah, he does.
He
shoot his
shot
dog.
the dog.
Did-
Like he had his dog. Every single one of these had a dog, which is really sweet. And this is the only one where he's like, "Well, I don't work here anymore, so I guess this dog needs to die."
There's also an extended like fox hunting scene in this that really upset you because I was like, they're just acting, and you were like, I don't know, it's 1955. Like I think that they might actually be like killing a fox.
No,
on
it was
screen.
a boar hunt.
A boar hunt. That's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
No, that boar died.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
that
it
was,
really freaked you out.
that was
You didn't like
document.
that.
It didn't freak me out. It upset me.
Yeah, upset you.
Like
yeah.
I did not want to watch the animal die in it.
Yeah.
Actually,
All right.
like I don't think the dog died. I think the dog was like, "Je suis un acteur."
Just use an actor.
No, I'm fine. It's totally fine. Wah, wah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, this movie, that's the only thing I remember from it. This movie is nothing.
Yeah.
But you're reminding me that there was a thing I wanted to say about the book, because the thing coming out of the book that I had is like, okay, well, what does this book have? This book has primarily sex. It also has some stuff about class.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you can't show the sex and you don't really show the class, what are you left with?
Yeah.
Well, you're left with a movie, like, it's not a love story.
Yeah.
Like, I think the quote-unquote love story aspect of it is kind of the most minor part of why the book was written.
Yeah.
So if all you do is show this as, like, a love story, now it's nothing.
Yeah.
Now you're left with nothing. There are many more effective love stories that are out there than Lady Chatterley's Lover. That's kind of, to me, it seemed that's not what the book's about. And this movie doesn't really deal in the class stuff, and it can't show the sex stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why I felt like it's kind of nothing.
Sure.
Like it's hoping that the big emotional climax, I'm sorry.
Oh God.
Like, no, I genuinely couldn't think of a better word. Like the big emotional climax comes from now they can be together.
Yeah.
It felt empty to me.
Yeah.
It felt like it didn't have anything.
All right. 1981.
Do you want to just get it out of your system? Who directed this movie?
Just jacking.
Okay. Juste Jacquin is a French director
It's just jacking.
who's directed a number of things, including the first Emmanuel movie.
Which this actress was also in.
Yeah, Sylvia Christel, or Christel, I'm not sure, also played Emmanuel in that, and 4 of the 6 sequels.
Hmm.
And then in 1981, Yoram Globus and Menachem Golan produced this for Canon Films.
Uh-huh.
All I'll say is this. I'm going to link to some information about Canon Films. If you don't know anything about Golan and Globus and Canon Films, boy, they made a ton of money. They knew how movies worked. They knew what people wanted to see. And what they did is they bought shitty scripts for no money and turned around and made money.
Yeah.
They knew how to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think at any point they thought they were making art, but they thought they could make stuff that people would think was art and that people would want to go see.
With boobs and dong.
Anyway, Juste Jacquin directed this. It was
Jackin'.
written by Mark Beam, Jacquin, and Christopher Wicking. It starred Sylvia Christel as Lady Constance Chatterley, Nicholas Clay as Oliver Mellors, and Shane Bryant as Sir Clifford Chatterley, and Anne Mitchell as Ivy Bolton. I feel like those are our four main people.
Yeah. There's truly no one else.
I mean, occasionally Hilda is occasionally someone
Hilda's,
important, but in this one, this one, Anton, the German guy who's only in the first scene of the movie. You remember him, right?
He's a very important character.
Anthony Stewart Head.
There it is.
It was great seeing him in one scene.
Being very young and very German.
He's there. He's very young. He's very German, and then the war is
war breaks out at the party,
and it's very awkward for the British people to have the German guy at their party after war is broken
I mean,
out.
doesn't that happen in Downton Abbey that war breaks out and they're like they have to stop the party to announce that? I mean, it literally happens in Gone with the Wind too.
But I'm saying there isn't that one German guy at
just
the
like
party.
oh
He's
no,
just really awkwardly saying, "No, I will sing the German anthem."
Scheiße.
Anyway, Tony Head's in one scene in this, which was really fun.
Yeah.
Oh no, Elizabeth Spriggs was in this one. She was
a random
Lady
old,
Eva.
old lady.
She was nothing.
She was nothing.
So
anyway, like this one starts kind of weirdly also starts with like a hunting scene that made me think, why are we doing like two like fox hunting scenes in two different movies? I think it's just to establish kind of like the place and time that's just fox hunting. But it's weirdly, it's like not in flashback or anything. It actually starts like way before the war. Like it shows them living their lives, like being rich people at Rugby, and then they have this ball, and then, as you say, war breaks out, and Clifford goes off to war.
It was just apparently really important to some filmmakers to say to the audience, like, I know Clifford can't walk now, but he used to could.
He used to walk good.
He used to could.
He used to could. And so he comes back from the war. I was actually thinking about this sort of as you were talking before about the commentary about the fact that Clifford is in a wheelchair, uses a wheelchair. Going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the episode, like, it's not D.H. Lawrence making a commentary about, like, disability per se and, like, what it is like to be a disabled person in a world that does not accommodate disability very well. Like, I think if that were what he were trying to talk about, Clifford would be a much more sympathetic character. What I think it is that the author is talking about is more like the loss of virility, the loss of manhood as a disability. It's not that he can't walk, it's that his penis doesn't work. Imagine he walked just fine and his penis didn't work. It would be like the same story.
But we wouldn't get the fun scene where his motorized wheelchair doesn't work and Mellors has to push it.
Yes, exactly. It's literal impotence is what he is not talking about disability as disability in the way that we think of it today. He's talking about impotence. Both philosophical and literal impotence.
I mean, is there also something in there about how you have this guy? I mean, this is the class thing, I think, is that you have someone who previous to this assumed that they held a lot of power.
Yeah.
And now can't deal with adversity because they have no real power.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that just ties back into this idea of virility, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm supposed to be virile and manly, and I can't do any of those virile, manly things that I could do before.
Well, like in the book,
who am I?
The thing that gives him back like any kind of virility is that he gets super into business. Like the book is the only thing that ever shows him as a writer.
Yeah.
He's never a writer in any version of it, but he's actually a popular writer in the book until he learns about business.
Yeah, business. You will love business. And also,
it is the British way.
Feeling up Mrs. Bolton occasionally.
That's at the very end. Like, she's into it. Like, she's not into it.
But
she's just like, this may as well happen.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have other stuff you want to say about this version?
Okay. This is a Western movie. This is an English language movie done in a very non-English European style.
Yeah.
Which is that everything in the movie is ADR.
Yeah.
Almost the entire time.
Yeah.
Because why would you bother? Like, it's hard to record audio on set. Why would you even bother recording audio? Just record all the dialogue later. It's very Italian.
Yeah.
You know? And this movie does that. It's very Italian. It's
including
very French.
All
and this
the sex noises.
Everything. The sex noises, the dialogue, all of it recorded in ADR. And like, I don't know, when everything in the movie is ADR, it does kind of prevent me from like emotionally connecting with the characters.
Well, this is kind of what I wanted to talk about, how emotionally disconnected I was. I just as an example, as a for instance, we're sitting there watching this movie and they're in full sex scene, right?
Yep.
They're like in full
We've
sex
already
scene mode.
we've already seen Mellor's dong. We've
Yeah.
already seen I mean
They're
Lady Chatterley. I've seen everything.
they're humping and pumping away, like
Mhm.
literally mid sex scene, and my mind is wandering. And I turn to Jeremy. Okay, if you're related to me, I need you to stop listening for a second. I turn to Jeremy and go, "Hey, you know what we haven't done in a long time?" And Jeremy looks at me, turns and looks at me with this look on his face like, yes, thinking that I'm going to say something flirty or sexy. I start laughing because I realize what I am about to say. I'm just suddenly hearing myself what I'm about to say because it had no relationship to what was happening on
Just say
screen.
the thing you said.
I said,
You know what we haven't
you know
done
we
in a
haven't
long
done in a
time?
long time? Got Popeye's chicken for lunch.
I've never been more in love with you.
It was the funniest thing that's ever happened in our entire marriage, but I
It's the
think
funniest thing you've ever said.
it's just illustrative of how not engaged I was with anything that was happening in this movie. That in the middle of the sex scene, I was like, you know what I would love? Some of that spicy Popeye's chicken. Oh, God. Also,
Thank you all for listening. This episode's over.
also, this is my only other note. I recognized the house, and I was like,
Yeah.
is that house the same house that's in the 1993 version that I'm very familiar with? Not only is it the same house that was in the version from 12 years later, it's been in everything. That house is the most famous goddamn actor in this movie.
Did you write down what the name of the house is?
I sure didn't. Nope, absolutely
God
did not.
damn it. Okay, well, it's in the show notes.
Yeah.
We're going to find out what it is because I also didn't write it down.
That goddamn house has been in everything. All right, that's kind of all I have. It's okay.
I only have two quick things to say before we move on.
Okay.
One, they did my idea. And this is a thing I always love that happens when we do this show, that usually when I'm reading the book, I start to envision, like, how would I do this part? I had this idea as I was reading it that a fun way to introduce Mellors, because I feel like the normal expected way to introduce Mellors is the first time Connie ever sees him, there's like sparks. Something is happening. And I thought it would actually be really great to introduce him and she doesn't give a shit who he is because he's a servant.
Yeah.
Which actually makes sense. This movie did that.
It did that, yeah.
It literally did that.
I did like that, yeah.
Like, and so it's not the scene later when Clifford's chair isn't working and it's like a power play and he needs Mellors to push it, but he doesn't. That's a whole thing. This is just he needs a bit of a push.
Yeah.
And so he calls Mellors over and we don't even see Mellors' face.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I thought that was good.
Yeah, I really like the idea. I feel like the execution was a little flat because it did give us a little bit of a build up to like, ooh, what's he going to look like? Are we going to see his face? When are we going to see his face? And we do end up seeing his face in the classic scene where she sort of comes around the corner and he's like
Stripped to the waist.
But
also with his butt and his dick out.
Yeah, bathing himself. But the face reveal was a little anticlimactic. I'm not saying this actor is unattractive, but it just wasn't what I was expecting because my note in that moment was...
You're expecting Boromir.
My note in that moment was she must be very deprived if this is sexy.
Aw. He's a little stocky, but he's a handsome guy.
No. Once I got used to it, I was like, oh, yeah, no, he's an attractive guy. There's nothing wrong with it. It just was not what I was expecting. You know how here's my metaphor. You take a sip of something and you think it's going to be carbonated, but it's just flat water.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with flat water. It's not supposed to be carbonated, but it's just not what you were expecting. And you're kind of like, oh, what is that? That's all that the reaction was.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong. You just looked at a human being and said, oh, what's that?
He grew on me. It was okay.
Just a couple more quick things. One, was this the sweatiest Sir Clifford?
Oh my God, he was so pale and sweaty.
Pale
he
and
was
sweaty
so
and unsettling.
Pale and sweaty. Yeah, he was not well. He was
looked
not
like,
a well man.
At one point, about halfway through, I realized that I thought he looked like Dave Foley.
Yeah,
but
he
not
did
that he
look
looked
like
like Dave
Foley.
Foley,
No,
that
he
he looked
did.
like a character Dave
Yeah.
Foley would have played in Kids in the Hall. But anyway, the last thing I have to say about this, and this is the thing that I just really ended up hating about. I hated this movie. Like, this is a stupid movie that is poorly made and had nothing to say, and all it had was just sex.
Yeah.
And even that was unsettling and not done that well. Like, this Mellors is not the Mellors from the book, which I'm not against, but this Mellors was boring.
Yeah.
He just had a bug up his ass the entire time. And, like, it's not really, you're not getting points for making the movie about class, even though the book was kind of about that.
Yeah.
By having your Mellors be someone who's like, you'll never want to be with me because we're different classes. And then he just storms off.
Yeah.
That's him the entire movie.
Yeah.
He just is intensely ashamed of his class and assuming she'll never want to be with him. And then at the end, she wants to be with him.
Yeah.
And then we're left with nothing.
Yeah.
It is another movie that left me feeling absolutely nothing. Just a big, flaccid movie.
Wow.
I didn't appreciate it.
All right. 1993, I was a little bit nervous. This was a movie that I had said to you like a number of times over the years, like, this is pretty good. Like, I remember this as being pretty good. I do own it on DVD, and we should maybe watch it sometime. But then, having seen now these other two versions that we had not enjoyed, I was like really worried that it wasn't going to hold up to my recollection of being quite enjoyable. And you said to me, is it good? And I was like, I remember it being very enjoyable. I'm not willing to say, based on my recollection at this moment in time, that it was good or not good, but I certainly remember it being very enjoyable to watch.
Because just for context, at this point that I'm asking you this, I had read a book that I didn't particularly enjoy.
Yes.
And watched two movies, neither of which I particularly enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I was really feeling like if I was going to enjoy any of them, it was going to be this one. So if this one isn't like at least enjoyable to watch, then what's
so I was
then I'm
just
going
really
to hate this whole experience.
Yeah, I was just really worried that I was going to have that experience where we sit down and it's something that I've seen before and remember liking, and suddenly I'm seeing it through your eyes, seeing it for the first time, and it's not good. However,
I loved it. It was
you
amazing.
loved it, and it was super fun watching it with you because I think I enjoyed it almost more watching it through your eyes because you were having such a great time.
This is one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like intentionally funny.
Yeah.
I loved every minute of it. It's so good. First of all, it does the sex really well because you've got Jolie Richardson.
Very pretty. Famously pretty.
Famously very pretty. You've got Sean Bean.
Very pretty.
Very pretty.
Famously very
pretty. Doing fun sex with each other.
In like a less uncomfortable way than some versions have previously done.
They're both very good actors.
Even like the running around in the rain scene that I find very uncomfortable because it's so awkward. There's a scene where they like are doing it and then it starts raining and they like run out naked in the rain and then they come back and like cover each other's naked parts in flowers, which is a very weird thing to do. But like,
I feel like this movie leaned into how
they
weird
leaned
it was
and just made it like super fun. And it was actually kind of fun and sexy that they were like, you're like, ooh, I want to kind of get chased naked in the rain. That's fun.
Like, this was the only one that involved the flowers thing, and the look on Mellor's face is just kind of going like, this is awfully cheeky what we're doing right now.
This is pretty silly, but yeah, I'm leaning into it.
Yeah, so that's okay. So I'll just say the sex, which again I think is the primary thing from the book.
Yeah.
The sex stuff was great.
I also, just for absolute context, I have a huge crush on Sean Bean. I find him very attractive in everything ever.
Shocking.
Yeah.
The first person who's ever said that ever.
Yes.
Second, though, boy, the class stuff is in this, and boy, is it fantastic.
Yeah.
It is so good and so funny and so dramatic and present all the time. Do you know what this reminded me of so much?
What's that?
It reminded me of the Andrew Davies Emma that we actually watched for last Valentine's Day.
Oh, okay.
Because class is not really a big thing in the book, Emma. And it wasn't really a thing in most of the versions that we watched, but when Andrew Davies, the Kate Beckinsale version,
Yeah.
he like clearly wanted to inject some class stuff into it. But the thing is, Emma already had plenty of stuff going on. It had interesting characters having interesting relationships. The class stuff was like, I'm not opposed to it, but it's not like the story needed it.
Yes.
Lady Chatterley, though, like, if all you do is the sex, that leaves it a little hollow.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do the class stuff, do it well.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. So Ken Russell directed this and also co-wrote it with Michael.
And also is in it.
Well, that's another thing too. But I have been looking forward to mispronouncing this person's name. I don't know how to pronounce it. Michael Hagiaj. Russell co-wrote the movie with him. The series, rather, 4-part series.
Yeah, not for nothing. This is a much longer version than any other version that we watched. They had plenty of time to spend on everything.
4 hours felt like 90 minutes.
It really did. Truly did.
The pace of it was fantastic. And as you say, Ken Russell also plays Sir Michael Reed. He plays Connie's father.
Yes.
And his wife, Hetty Baines, plays Hilda, her sister, his daughter.
Which is weird.
But she was really good.
But I didn't know that, at the time. And the other thing that I think makes this version is that Mrs. Bolton has a huge part in it and is amazing. Like,
Well, that's-
she's almost the best
Yeah.
character in the movie.
Mhm. But that's what I was saying. So, like, the sex is great.
Yeah.
The class stuff is great. But then it just goes the extra mile and makes it entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
And when I say entertaining, I don't mean funny, even though it was
funny.
really funny.
Like, it was intentionally funny.
Yeah. I just like getting swept up in a story and having things plotted in an interesting way and have things shot in an interesting way and edited in an interesting way. It was an engaging experience,
Yeah.
which nothing up till this point was.
Yeah. And the funny thing is they changed the ending pretty significantly.
Sorry, you're incorrect.
I'm incorrect?
Well, you're telling only part of the story.
Well,
They improved the ending
the
greatly.
ending. Well, I will say the ending is not based on Lady Chatterley's Lover that we read. The ending, like that other version that we watched, is based
That
on
we'll get to in a second, yeah.
like this unpublished version called like
Sir Thomas and Lady
Sir
Jane.
Thomas and Lady Jane, which is the nicknames they give
Sir
to each
Penis
other's.
and Lady Vagina.
Yeah. So the part like where he gets beaten up by his ex-wife's brother, that's from that, I'm pretty sure. But it gives them like this happy ending where they like, she gets this note from him and she's already leaving Clifford and he's getting on a boat to go to Canada and she like rushes there because she has to make the boat and she gets there just in time and they call his name over the loudspeaker and Brian Blessed is there for some reason.
He's just there. He's like the captain. What is he, the captain
He's
of
like
the
the
first?
first
Just
mate or
someone who
something.
works on the ship, but he's just there.
He's just like, oh, going to get that Canadian tail, huh? And Mellor's just like,
And he gets to do like one Brian Blessed laugh. He gets to do the and then walks off.
It's amazing. It was like Brian Blessed was just hanging around the set, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to do a scene?" He's like, "Oh yeah, that's great." And they get this like great reunion, and they're so happy to see each other. And it's like the only version that we watched where I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm so happy that these two crazy kids got together," because they not only did the movie want me to believe that they loved each other, I believed that they loved each other and I was invested in them getting back together. They loved each other. It was great. It was great.
Like, we could spend an hour talking about all the things that are great about this,
Yeah.
but it made, I guess my bigger thing about it is it made everything work.
Yeah,
Can I give one example of 50?
sure.
In the book, when Connie is in that period of her life where she's the one who's the primary caregiver for Clifford before he hires Mrs. Bolton, she is described as looking really terrible in the book.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of versions where we had a lot of people look at her and say, "You look terrible,"
And she looked
but like
fine.
she looked amazing.
Yeah.
It was fine. Jolie Richardson looked fucking terrible in the 10 minutes of this movie where she needed to look terrible.
They worked very hard at making her look terrible because, as aforementioned,
famously pretty.
they did a very good job making her up to look terrible.
Like, everything actually works. No part of it is just people looking at you saying, "I'm going to say a line that's going to make you feel a certain way," but like, no, we're actually going to demonstrate it to you we're going to use storytelling and cinema and makeup and costumes and acting. We're going to use all the tools at our disposal to actually make you feel things.
Yeah. I would like to talk for a moment about perfect casting.
Yeah.
One, I believe that Sean Bean was perfectly cast.
Yep.
There is much made in the book about the way this character speaks that is different from the way that the other character speaks because they are in Derbyshire, which is the north of England. So he speaks with a Derbyshire accent, which is we are given to understand is a very thick, distinctive northern accent. But the thing the book makes really clear that we also I don't think see in any movie version is he basically code switches.
Yeah.
Like he can speak like them when he wants to. And it's very clear that he chooses not to. He chooses to speak in a Derbyshire accent, but he can speak differently if he wants to. None of the movies depict that at all. But I do appreciate that they cast Sean Bean, who is literally from that part of the country and who has a very authentic northern accent. That's how he talks in real life. And I appreciated that. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this before, very attractive. Like almost too attractive.
No, it was perfectly
cast. Perfectly. Well, he has the right body type for it because he's not supposed to be this like hulking man. He's supposed to be kind of like he was sick. You know, he was in the war and he was sick and he wasn't well. And when Sean Bean takes his shirt off, like he's a pale gentleman, you know, who he's just tan. He's got sort of a farmer's tan.
Wiry.
He's wiry. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's wiry. He's not like extremely muscular. but he is a well-built gentleman.
So we've talked about Sean Bean.
We talked about Sean Bean.
Jolie Richardson is incredible in this.
But
and
Sean Bean also has a really cute smile. I love Sean Bean's I love Sean Bean's smile. And so he's so cute because he can like kind of frown, but then when he's like really loves her and he does this big smile at her, it's adorable. Anyway, I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. So Jolie Richardson is great.
Yeah.
One choice they do make is that it is not called Lady Chatterley's Lover. It is called Lady Chatterley.
Which I think is appropriate.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make the assumption that this was done to signal to everyone that we're actually going to treat Lady Chatterley as the main character of her own story, which in fact this does, which I appreciate. But there is someone we have to talk about. Now, I want to say something. Marlon Brando.
Yes.
Let's say that I told you, oh, Marlon Brando? Yeah, I've seen him. I saw him in a couple. The only thing I remember seeing him in is that movie Bedtime Story. You know, the one that they turned into Dirty Rotten Scoundrels? It was like him and David Niven.
Yeah.
And like, he was fun in that. He was definitely fun. I can see why people like him because he was very charismatic and he was very fun.
Yeah.
And then you tell me.
That's not like the role he's known for, right?
I'd be like, no, what should I watch?
Have you heard of a movie called The Godfather? Have you heard of a movie called Streetcar Named Desire? Like, were you aware of those?
Here's the thing about James Wilby. I feel that up until this point, I have been deprived of James Wilby's greatest performance.
Peak Wilby, if you will.
Because as you say, I've seen him in other things. We talked about him on this show in Howard's End.
We loved him in Howard's End.
Loved him in Howard's End.
Playing,
he's fantastic.
Honestly, a similar character.
Yep. I love him in Gosford Park.
Yep.
He is playing
a similar
character. He's really good at it. I was not ready for how good he was going to be as Clifford in this. This is so far beyond those other performances, it blows my mind. This is one of the best performances I have ever seen. This is, and I try not to say this too often because I don't want it to lose its meaning. This is Colin Firth as Darcy level casting. This is someone who elevated and so perfectly encapsulated the character in a way that I didn't know I needed. He's the best Clifford I've ever seen. Not only that, he's the best Clifford that could ever be. I just feel like Clifford is the type of character where I don't want to sympathize with him because he's not a very sympathetic character. But I also don't want to be bored by him.
Like bored by hatred. You know what I
I don't want to just hate him.
If he's just awful, then who cares?
Like, it's such a fine line to walk to make someone both awful and really entertaining and compelling. And they thread that needle with this character in this so beautifully.
And one thing I really appreciate is I don't think there's ever anything where it's like, other than the scene where he loses control of the vehicle, but even then it's because he's being a dick about it.
Yeah, it's all about who he is.
It's all about who he is. Nothing is making fun of him for being disabled or people who have disabilities, or the fact that he's disabled is never the butt of the joke. It's always he's awful.
Yeah.
And he treats other people terribly and is so disgusting, but it's always the portrait, as you kind of pointed out before. It's like a case study of a man who has lost power and virility and is sort of desperately trying in any way that he can to be better than other people.
Mm-hmm.
But he can't because he's a very small man.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't think I would have appreciated this as much before I had a toddler.
Yeah, he's such a toddler.
Such a toddler the entire time in the best way.
Yeah.
It's just, to say that it's a great comedic performance, I think is underselling it. It is a great comedic performance, but it is just a great all-around performance in a show full of great performances.
Like if you told me that, oh yeah, at the time actually James Wilby, the actor, had a 2-year-old at home and he has given interviews to say he was channeling that in his performance, I would believe that 100%.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I love the whole Mrs. Bolton thing too, because she is like, oh yeah, no, I know how to deal with toddlers. No, it's fine. Mm-hmm. No, I get it. Like she's like. This is
Shirley Ann Field, by the way.
Yeah.
Who's worth mentioning because she's incredible in this.
She's incredible in this and so sympathetic and so kind to Connie. And again, like, sort of set up in this way that you're like, is she gonna be the antagonist? Is she gonna turn all this around? And you know almost immediately that she's so sympathetic. The scene where she talks to Connie about her husband and what it's like to be truly loved and to never have that feeling ever again, like, it is this beautiful moment between the two of them. that movie, it's just like sincere when it needs to be sincere,
Mm-hmm.
but it's funny when it needs to be funny. Nobody's taking it too seriously, but nobody's making fun of the characters either. Like as you say, it like walks such a fine line in a really amazing way. I don't know, like I've not read any criticism of this. I don't know if ever do other people know? Do
Yeah.
people know this is really good?
I mean, this goes back to, this will always be, I've talked about the Jaws moment
Yeah.
before, you know, the idea, like what you just said. Like, do people know this is good? This, though, is something we don't talk about as much because to me, this is the Jurassic Park moment because that was so early on in this show where we really, it was the first time we could ever plant our feet firmly and say, no, the movie's better at being a movie than the book is at being a book.
Sure.
And you know what? I'm not saying you have to say this.
Sure.
I'm saying this. Lady Chatterley from 1993 is better at being a miniseries than the book Lady Chatterley's Lover is at being a book.
I certainly enjoyed watching it more than I enjoyed reading the book.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I just think it's better. It has more things to say. It says what it has to say better than the book does. It's fantastic. And I'm not saying it exists in a vacuum. Clearly, it took a lot from the book. It needed the book,
Yeah.
but boy, I loved it so much. And I just have one more thing, and I'm going to hand things back over. I don't want to spoil little moments in this, but the little moments are what make this work. So I'm going to give 2 examples of little moments that are amazing.
Okay.
Hilda gets to the house. This is at when Connie looks terrible, and Connie's saying, "Don't say anything to Clifford. He doesn't even want to see you right now because he doesn't like you." She comes storming into Clifford's room to scream at him about how terrible Connie looks. And the choice they make in that moment is because they're family. Like they are
their brother and sister.
Their brother and sister-in-law. Like she comes up, and while she's yelling at him, she gives him this like really perfunctory, like affectionate kiss on the head. And it's this beautiful thing that I never would have thought of, and I've never seen in anything else, but it says so much about their relationship. It's maybe my favorite moment in the 4 hours of the show. So little moments like that. But another one that was so good is when Clifford gets a letter from Connie saying that she wants to leave him. It's delivered by Mrs. Bolton. The way they do the scene is he's so sad, and she puts her hands up to her face because she's, you know, quote unquote crying, because she needs to show him how upset she is about how terrible this is. But she's literally doing the like little kid, I'm going to look through my fingers at you to see if you can see that I'm not really crying. And it's so broad, like it's such a broad comedic thing. And I appreciated where it got put in this really dramatic scene.
Yeah.
I loved it. Those little moments like that. The 2 that I mentioned, if there's 2 that I mentioned, there's 100 I didn't.
Yeah. Also, this version was the only one we watched that I loved the costumes and the makeup and the hair so much. And I'm not an expert in 1920s costumes. I'm not an expert in any costumes. So if you are an expert in 1920s costumes and you watch this and you came to me and you're like, oh, no, this is totally inaccurate because of blah, 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 I totally believe you, and I'm sure you're right. But this seemed pretty accurate to me. I looked at it and went, these people are in the 1920s. It's not just vague oldie-timey. And I especially like the difference between like what Connie wears when she's just at home versus what she wears when she's dressed for dinner but just with Clifford versus what she wears when she's at a party versus what she wears when she goes to walk in the woods. Like it all looked very 20s to me, like very like low waistlines on the dresses and like white tights and little heels. And I love that, like, Hilda's, like, much more of a flapper. Like, Hilda's got, like, a bob with bangs, but Connie's got long hair that she wears up sometimes. You know what it was? It was, like, very internally consistent.
Yeah.
All of the costuming. So whatever choices they were making, it was clear that they hadn't just, like, gone to some costume closet and grabbed whatever looked oldie-timey to them. Mm-hmm. There was a point of view about the costuming. I particularly noticed the makeup. So Connie definitely looks like she's not wearing makeup when she's at home by herself. I don't know if Julie Richardson is wearing makeup that very cleverly looks like she's not wearing makeup, or whether the actress is actually just so beautiful that she looks fine on camera without makeup.
I feel like she's definitely wearing makeup.
Yeah, but Hilda's makeup when she's dressed up for a party, her face is like powdered white and she's got these like red, like Clara Bow It Girl lips. It looks awful. It doesn't look like modern makeup. It looks like what I assume probably 1920s makeup looked like, because I'm sure they didn't have the makeup technology that we have now. Like there's
technology.
There's no well, yeah, we have makeup technology.
Sure. Yeah.
There's no contouring. There's no you know what they don't have in this movie that I hate? anytime I see
A
it in a
smoky
period
eye?
movie, no smoky eyes, not one smoky
Mhm.
eye in this goddamn movie.
I know how you feel about a smoky eye.
Yeah, I mean, in a modern context, perfectly fine. In 1920, they didn't do smoky eye,
Mhm.
but they did do like heavy
Sorry,
mascara.
I know how you feel about an anachronistic smoky
Yes,
eye.
that's right. I just thought it seemed to me that either someone knew what they were doing or someone was able to fake very well knowing what they were doing, but at the same time was internally consistent.
Mhm.
That's what I'll say.
It's so good.
It's so good.
It's so good. Do you
All
want to
right,
move on?
let's move on.
Okay, I feel like this is great. We've got this fantastic energy going into 2006's Lady Chatterley, and it's just perfect time for us to
Slow
the brakes and slow down. This movie that we watched
It's 3 hours
was
long.
2 hours and 45 minutes.
It was 3
I found out
million
that-
hours
that apparently,
long.
yeah, so 1993 was 4 hours and felt like 2.
Yeah.
This was almost 3 and felt like 6. And apparently there is a 220-minute extended version that I did not have access to. So this is 2006's Lady Chatterley.
Well, I just want to point out,
Yeah.
not only was it 3 hours long, I bet the script was 15 pages.
Yes.
Because they don't do a lot of talking.
Nope. This is the weird thing. Nothing demonstrates to me more that like anyone's reaction to a movie is based on not only who they are, but also the day they're watching it.
Yeah.
We watched it in 2 sittings because it's a very long movie, and we have to do that because we have a little kid. The first night, we watched the first like hour and 40 minutes of it, and I remember turning to you and I was just like, I am so here for this energy right now.
Just want to
I
chill
was
out.
really here for it. I was
Yeah.
really enjoying it that first night. Whatever happened the second night we were watching it, I was not here for that energy, and I
Yeah.
was bored out of my mind. So this is directed by Pascal Ferrand. I think it is worth mentioning that this is the only one we watched that was actually written and directed by a woman.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but keep going.
Okay. Written by her and Roger Bobo. It starred Marina Hands as Lady Chatterley. I want to say she won at like the Tribeca Film Festival. She won like Best Actress. Anyway, Jean-Louis Couloc as Parkin, because he's not Mellors, he's Parkin, because this was also based on, what is it?
The
John Thomas and Lady Jane?
Yeah, whatever.
Penis and Vagina?
Yep.
So apparently he was not Mellors in that.
Yep.
And it was, I will say this too, it was kind of cool to watch a movie that was in French.
But about English people in England.
Like, it took place
was
in England.
explicitly taking place in England, just like you would watch an English language movie that they would all be in France.
Yeah.
And
I just
realistically speaking French.
it was nice and refreshing, and I enjoyed that
yeah,
aspect
it was
of
interesting. I don't know that I've ever seen a French movie that in the real world they would have been speaking English. This is interesting.
Yeah, it starred Hippolyte Girardot as Sir Clifford Chatterley.
Also pretty sweaty.
I don't know what else to talk about with this.
I like the part because we're watching it with subtitles, obviously, and the guy does hang some dong. At one point, he turns around and he says something. The subtitle just like perfectly covered up his dong. Oh, it was really funny.
Okay, let me
like,
say some. Can I say some good things?
Yeah.
I think the performances are very good.
Mhm.
Like I said, the atmosphere is very intentional, and I kind of responded to that. I'm just gonna say this: it is the only one that showed cleanup.
That was sort of what I was going to mention, that you can kind of tell it's directed by a woman
Mm-hmm.
because there's a point where they were doing a bone and then she's getting up and then she actually had to
Clean up,
clean up,
which is part of
which
it.
is part of like doing sex. Like you
Yeah.
gotta clean up afterwards.
And like, I was here for it.
Yeah.
I was here for that. Like, show cleanup in Lady Chatterley's Lover. That's fine and expected. I
Yeah.
don't see anything wrong with that. The one thing I did really enjoy about this, that's something I kind of figured out as we were watching all of them, is that for me personally, if the way you're adapting Lady Chatterley is that the sex is the climax of the movie,
So
is
to
the most
speak.
important. No, yeah, so to speak, is the most important thing. I'm not going to be into it.
yeah.
And 1981, the Jules Chacun version, that one definitely treated like, once we have them naked and doing sex on screen, that is the emotional climax of this. That is when we have the audience more than we will ever have them.
Mhm.
And to me, that's like not the most interesting part of it. 1993 didn't treat it that way, even though the sex was very sexy. And 2006 didn't treat it that way either. The sex was just a normal thing that happened between people.
Yeah.
But it wasn't any more important than the conversations that they had or other interactions that they had. It was just their relationship wasn't defined by the sex. The sex
Sure.
was just a big part of their relationship. And so having cleanup in it, I thought worked for that because
Yeah.
it's not showing sex as this amazing poetic way for two bodies to come together, heart and soul and mind. No, sex is a real thing that happens with real
Like
bodies,
human bodies.
and I don't know if you know this about human
But they're
bodies.
kind of gross.
They're kind of gross.
Yeah.
And even though sex is great, human bodies are gross, and cleanup is a thing.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that they showed that.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I guess I would just say for every little moment like that where it's like, wow, I kind of like that they're lingering on this and
Mhm.
really like letting this moment have the space to breathe. And as you say, like just kind of showing these little insignificant moments all adding up to a relationship. For every moment that you appreciate that when they're doing that, there is a contrasting moment where you're going, I cannot believe this is how this movie is choosing to spend its time.
100%.
It is 3 hours long. So you would think we would get a lot of insight into a lot of different characters, like really, really explore them. Mrs. Bolton is probably on screen for 20 seconds. Like there's so little Mrs. Bolton in this. Like we get nothing of her. And then we get about 25 minutes from the end, and it's like someone was writing happy birthday on a poster and they they misjudged the size and they had to write the last couple letters like really small and like going down the side. It just kind of skips forward and the director's like, "Merde, I got to get to the end." And so there's like weird voiceover.
So there's voiceover twice in the movie.
Yeah.
So the movie gives us these intertitles that suddenly throughout the movie everything like fades to black. That's the bridge between scenes.
Mhm.
But a lot of times between scenes there will suddenly be text up on screen telling you, and then Lady Chatterley did not see Parkin for quite a while.
Yeah.
And that's just told to us in text.
And I didn't hate that.
I didn't-
Stylistically, I did not hate that.
I didn't hate that, but the thing I'm always looking for is consistency.
Yes.
So we're getting
this
those
is what I'm saying.
at 53 minutes into the movie. Suddenly there's a narrator.
Yeah.
Suddenly, instead of seeing it on screen, now we're hearing someone tell us these things. And then we don't hear a narrator again until 2 hours and 20 minutes into it.
Yeah.
Only twice in the movie is there actually a narrator. I don't know what this movie was trying to do. I don't understand why the director thought that they could just do completely different techniques.
Yeah. And then there was one point where Mrs. Bolton is speaking and then you see her and she's reading a letter in the context of the movie, but she's just talking directly to the camera.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of as a form of narration. And then there's sort of voiceover, as you say, like over kind of a montage thing. And there's one scene where someone just like comes in and says like, "Oh yeah, this thing happened." Whereas in every other version and in the book, it's like actually a scene.
Yeah.
I don't understand. And then they get to the end and it just ends. Like they're just talking and suddenly the movie ends.
And then it rolls over and I'm laying there and saying,
What about me?
not only am I not done, this is one of the most unsatisfying experiences I've ever had.
Truly. Like, I don't have that much else to say about it.
I wanted to like it. I
Yeah.
really, really did. I just didn't by the end of it.
I would do not watch it.
This movie to me feels, and I try not to say this too often, but boy, this movie feels pretentious to me. It
Yeah.
feels like someone doing making a bunch of superficial choices about what they feel is artistic. And some of them are good choices, but some of them are bad choices because I don't think they're made for the right reasons.
You know what it reminded me of?
Mhm.
That more recent Wuthering Heights that we did not like at all.
Yeah.
That you literally could not see what was happening in
Mhm.
many scenes. That's kind of what it reminded me
It-
of. Like, someone's got a point of view, but I don't like it.
Yeah, and this stylistically was not like that.
No.
But yeah, in terms of motivation of a filmmaker,
Yeah.
it felt the same to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is a very apt comparison.
All right. I think I have a lot more to say about this last one.
Let's wrap this up.
All right.
Coming out of a 4-hour Lady Chatterley that was really good, but still 4 hours. So that's quite a lot of time to put towards something. And then a 2-hour and 45-minute version, which we ended up not liking very much. I was really excited. How excited was I when I told you that this next one we were watching was 89 minutes?
Oh, we were both quite excited. Although I think I do remember saying, how in the world are we going to get the whole plot of Lady Chatterley's Lover in 89 minutes? I was a little suspicious.
And it turns out
You cannot.
Nope, you can't do it. You can get whatever this plot is.
I think that it will be illustrative if I just read out 5 or 6 notes that I took chronologically.
Super quick before you do that.
Yeah.
This was Lady Chatterley's Lover,
Yes.
2015. It was a British TV production, written and directed by Jed Mercurio. Starred Holliday Grainger as Lady Chatterley. Starred Richard Madden as Oliver Mellors, who played Sean Bean's son on Game of Thrones, which is really fun. It starred James Norton as Sir Clifford Chatterley, who we'll get to,
Yeah.
and Jodie Comer as Ivy Bolton, as Mrs. Bolton. was weird for me because I only know her from Killing Eve,
Yeah.
and she's a very different character than that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just some stuff about this.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
I will say just really quickly, not related to this, if anyone is wondering, this is going to be the last version that we talk about on this episode.
Yeah.
There is supposedly, I think Netflix has optioned another version
Yeah.
that's supposed to be coming out like this year, maybe, or next year. And if anyone is kind of wondering, like, why did we not wait to do that? Because sometimes we do wait if we know there's something else coming out. I don't know. We didn't. We chose not to wait.
Yeah.
There was also like it was time sensitive because we wanted to do it for Valentine's Day, so we
Yeah.
would have had to wait like the year around. I don't know. We decided not to wait.
Sometimes we wait and sometimes we don't.
That's what
I
it
wish
is.
we had a better answer,
Yeah.
but that's why.
All right. So anyway, as I say, I think the first couple notes I took are going to be an illustration of sort of my state of mind. I wanted to like this. I
Mhm.
really wanted to like this. I went into it with a very open mind. And these are the first like couple bullet points here. This is how we're spending time. The tragedy is not that they used to have an amazing sex life. What are they wearing? WTF? Who walks to the window like that? She's jealous of sexy Mrs. Bolton? They have to get through the rest of the plot in an hour.
I mean, your first note to me is the note
Yeah.
about this version, which is this is how they're choosing to spend their time.
I
They
spent-
have 89 minutes. How long does it take before we are at a point where Clifford is at Ragby in a wheelchair and Constance is there and not having sex with him, and Mellors is their
It's
gamekeeper
like 25 minutes,
in
I
an
would say.
89-minute
Yeah.
movie?
I think that was the point where when he made his first appearance, I was like, how do we get from here to the end of the plot in an hour? He just showed up. I don't understand how this is going to work.
The big decision that they made with this one is that they wanted to, and I'm making some assumptions right here.
Yeah.
Let me be clear.
Yeah.
The big decision they made, according to me, is, well, what we need to do is we need to take Lady Chatterley down a peg or two.
Yeah.
Because she's way too likable in the book.
Yeah.
Way too sympathetic and way too likable in the other versions.
Hey, you know what
how
she should be?
Yeah, what's that?
A monster.
She should be a bit of a monster. Okay, so we're going to make her really unlikable. Also, Mellors, you know how he is just, I don't know, I could never really get into him that much. Well, we're not really going to do anything with his character that much. In fact, we're going to do less.
Hey,
He's
you know
not-
how he's nothing? He should
Yeah,
just be nothing.
He should be less than nothing.
Yeah.
You know how Clifford really, he's the stand-up. to me.
Man, I really sympathize with Clifford. Clifford gets a bad rap. Man, like
we
his
need to-
wife cheats on him.
Yeah, like that's not cool to do to a person.
Especially one in a wheelchair.
In a wheelchair. She's a monster. We need to really ramp up the sympathy for Clifford. Like, that's the big thing they decided to do, is they decided to make Clifford way more sympathetic, make her way less sympathetic. So by the end, I didn't like anybody.
And make Mellors nothing. So she's a terrible person for what she does to Clifford. And she's totally manipulative for the relationship she's having with Mellors because Mellors is nothing. So she's like completely taking advantage of him. I can almost see like the brushstrokes of what I think, as you say, of what I think they were trying to do,
Yeah.
which is to explore class and power dynamics and saying, hey, you know what? Lady Chatterley, as the member of the upper class, she has so much power in this situation. We're going to turn this around and say that the woman has power in a situation because of her class.
Guys, this is feminism, right? Isn't this what feminism is?
I think it's feminism.
I think this is feminism.
And I mean, the other thing that they do is they make all the characters very, very young. They age them all kind of down.
I do like sexy Mrs. Bolton. Here's the thing. I say sexy Mrs.
She's
Bolton.
not sexy at all. She's very sad.
Jodie Comer's beautiful.
I mean, she's beautiful, but I'm saying like in the context of the
the reason it's funny to hear myself say that is because she's young, sexy Mrs. Bolton.
yeah.
Whereas in 1993, Shirley Ann Fields is very sexy Mrs. Bolton.
She's also beautiful.
She's not very young, but she's very
She's
sexy.
a beautiful woman.
Oh, and at no point in any of these movies does Mrs. Bolton ever have like a sexual relationship with.
Clifford never
Clifford.
touches her boob
Yeah,
in any version.
it never happens in
Never
any
happens.
of these. Anyway, I just feel like it's worth calling out.
I think the other thing, so a choice that they made that I think really, if they wanted these characters to be sympathetic, really screwed them up. And by them, I mean the filmmakers. A choice that was made was to have everything happen so immediately following Clifford's wounding and return home. So, like, we see him return home in a wheelchair, and we see him almost immediately attempt suicide. So we know he's in a really bad way. And no time passes. Like in the book, he's been home for a while. He's been home for years. Like 4 or 5 years have passed since the end of the war. And we're firmly in the 20s. In this, someone is going, aha, did you know this isn't really a 1920s story? Because the war, you see, it ended in 1918. So it's not the 20s. It's still only 1918 because all the costumes are like, talk about like just like random oldie timey things from the back of the closet. But it's very clearly not 20s. Like her costumes are ridiculous, but it's very like Downton Abbey. It's not 1920s. That's why I wrote, what are they wearing?
Yeah.
But everything happens so soon. Clifford, he is still physically recovering and also processing a terrible trauma that happened to him. You can't look at this guy and go, wow, he's really a jerk. Like, he is going through something.
The stuff he's putting himself through. So I want to talk about my favorite scene in the whole movie. And it's not my favorite for how it made me feel. It's my favorite for how it made you feel while you were sitting next to me.
Yes, I think I have an inkling of what you are talking about.
So Clifford wants to have an heir. And rather than every other version where he says, hey, we need an heir, I am not capable, so I give you leave to do the deed with some person.
Yeah.
Just don't tell me about it, and hopefully they're actually a person and not a servant.
Yeah.
In this one, they have the scene, he says, we could still have a child. You know, science has made there's lots of amazing science discoveries
New
in the world.
discoveries happening every day. We live in the age of invention.
And then they cut to him getting electroshock treatment on his balls, we're given to understand. We don't know why. It's like something out of a horror movie. We see him getting shocked in agony
for hours
with Mrs. Bolton next to him. And Connie is in another room of the house, and she wants to leave. And the butler, was it Fields? Whatever his name is. He comes in. And she says, I need to get out of here. This is ridiculous. And he says,
I wrote it down.
It's my favorite line in anything we've ever watched because of how it made you feel.
Madam, I can't.
Do you want me to read? Give me your
can't
notebook.
Say it. No, I'll do it. In the event of fluid, your presence will be required immediately.
In the event of fluid. It's incredible. It is incredible.
Who decided that we needed a ball shock plot in Lady Chatterley's Lover? Is that supposed to make me feel sexy? Is that supposed to make me feel like I want these two crazy kids to get together?
No, it's supposed to make you think about class.
Is it?
I don't know. I don't know what it's supposed to do.
And then, like, she runs off to Mellor's arms, and she is a monster.
Yeah.
Her husband just had his balls shocked for her. It's awful.
Like, this is the best way I can describe what her character is in this. What I should be feeling is, why can't these two crazy kids get together? In this one, they completely ignore the fact that if she were to tell Clifford that Mellors is the father of her unborn child, it would totally screw up any divorce proceedings. Like, that's a major plot point in all of them, which is why they kind of need to keep everything on the DL until she has the baby.
Yeah.
Until the divorce is done with Clifford. In this one, she just comes right out and says, I'm having a baby. It's Mellard's and I'm leaving you. Grant me the divorce.
And like, in all of this, Clifford, the sweetest man in the world.
I mean, he's not the sweetest man in the world, but he's not awful.
Whose only crime was to be paralyzed. He's done nothing to her. And also, like, to be paralyzed, like, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's awful. And then, go ahead.
The best thing about her character that I can say is in every other version, my whole thing is, I want these two crazy kids to get together. In this one, they do get together, and they go driving off into the sunset together, and they get to be together. At no point did I ever think they were going to stay together.
Yeah.
Like, she felt like a rich socialite jumping from man to man.
Yes.
That's what it felt like. Like, she felt like, oh, Mellors is her latest boy toy.
Yeah.
And she's just going to leave him for someone else. She doesn't treat him like a person.
No. And
she's certainly not in love with him.
And even in the end, when they were there together, like, he was nothing to her.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't there together. He was just there. There's a sex scene in this. This was the one where
where your body went into your body.
My body went into my body. My bones left my body, and I died and was in hell. Which, book. In the book, I think you described it before, but there's a whole scene where he goes on and on about. There's a lot about like what it means to be a real woman and a real man that we didn't really quite get into. But like, she's got a nice butt.
Well, in the book, this is something as you say, I alluded to this at the very beginning, and I'm glad we're circling back to this because after this, honestly, I am spent. I have nothing else.
Nothing else.
But he says in the book,
in my tank.
What you have the finest ass of any lass or something?
The nicest woman's ass. He says the nicest woman's ass.
But like whatever it is, it's ass.
Yeah,
That's
ass.
specifically what it is.
Yeah.
In this one, what does he say?
He says you have the nicest behind of any lady.
Like,
and then he has a number of other words for butt, but none of them are ass. And I was like, I don't.
It blows my mind in 2015 that you can't say ass on television.
You can't say ass. You can say you. And then I died and could not watch the rest of the movie.
We were joking with each other as we were watching it that we were going to do like a Waldorf and Statler bit about how we hated it, that it was bad, it was awful, it was short. I loved it. But we can't even do that because we hated it so much.
At one point, she makes some kind of comparison. I think he's upset about class. And she does draw some kind of metaphor, and I turned to you. I don't remember. I literally don't remember what it was, but I turned to you, and I was like, you know, Shrek's insight about the onion is more profound than whatever it is that she just said.
There's no better way to end this than that. This was terrible. I hated it.
Ugh. What the fuck? The ending is also super fucked up. Mrs. Bolton like tells on them, and she's like, "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I was wrong." Like 10 seconds later,
I want to stop talking about this, and I want to do some quadrants so we can wrap this up.
Oh my God, absolute nonsense from someone that either did not read the book or did not understand it, or read it and drew all the wrong conclusions. Because I don't know how you read that book and go, you know who gets a bad rap? Clifford. I really want to tell Clifford's story as a sympathetic character.
Man. All right.
Oh.
Lady Chatterley's Lover, French, 1955. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Comme ci, comme ça.
Was it successful?
Comme ci, comme ça.
It's right in the middle. Right in the middle because we just don't know. 1981, Lady Chatterley's Lover, Juste Chacun. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No.
Canon Films, Menachem Golan and Yoram Globus and Juste Chacun. No, they did not care. Was it successful? I mean, no. It
was not good.
Bad.
It's not good.
1993. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Genuinely, yes, I do.
Maybe more than I did.
Yeah.
Like more than I thought anyone could. Was it successful?
It was beautiful.
Boy, howdy. 2006, Lady Chatterley, French. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Weirdly, yes.
Yeah.
I actually do.
Yeah.
It was a passion project.
I don't feel comfortable saying whether it was successful or not because I haven't watched the 2 hour and 20-minute extended version.
I feel comfortable.
So what's your feeling?
It was not successful.
Okay, there we go. 2015, Lady Chatterley's Lover. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No.
Do you think they read the source material?
No.
Do you think
I think
it
they
was
read
successful?
a treatment. No.
Well, I hope this episode has been as uncomfortable for everyone as it was for us.
If we can just bring slightly the feeling that we've experienced over the last 2 weeks to anyone else, our time will have been well spent.
I hope it was good for you. This has been Adapter Parish.
It was very bad for me.
If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 3 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Third, we are on Patreon. This show will always be free, but if you become a patron, you can get access to Adapter Parish Plus, our bonus show that releases every other week between episodes of this show, and our patron-only Slack community. It's been a lot of fun, and all the details are at patreon.com/adaptcast.
No, but seriously, can we get some Popeye's chicken?
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.